Welcome! Today we are counting down 7 tanks that do not change. And I'm not exactly talking about the fact that, let's say, you play from the T29 to the T32. They play exactly the same, therefore the tank does not change. The playstyle does not change. No. I'm not talking about that. I'm literally talking about the fact that the tank does not change, okay? You literally go from tier 9 to tier 10 and it's the same tank, except that maybe the gun is beefed up a little better, or the armor is beefed up a little more, or the gun depression is beefed up more, or all of the above. And that's what I'm counting down. Basically, the same model, the same tank, you know what you're getting from tier 9 to tier 10. I've got 7 of them for you guys here, and I had to go through a few. I was thinking the Leopard prototype, the Leopard 1, maybe? No, those are different tanks. The T54 to the T62A or 140, no. Those play exactly the same. They have the same gun, but they're different tanks. And so I threw those aside, right? And these are the ones that I settled on, starting at number 1 here, which is the tank I was playing. And this was the game I was playing where I was like, this is basically the 5A, isn't it? And it's awesome. Why don't I do a video about 7 tanks that are basically their tier 10s? And so here we go. The WZ-111-14 is literally just a WZ-111-5A, but at tier 9. It's got the same hull, less armor. It's got the same gun, less gun handling and DPM. And it's got the same shape, the same hull shape. Also, the tier 10, you get 2 degrees more gun depression on the gun, which is quite interesting. Very cool stuff. And so it's really cool. You go from tier 9 to tier 10, you know what you're getting, but it's just, if you liked the tier 9, you're going to love the tier 10 because it does everything the tier 9 does, but better. And you get basically the same matchmaking. It's like, oh, but tier 9s, you can fight tier 7s. Bruh. Okay, so listen, here's the deal. I played 21 games to record this video. 21 games. One of them was I top tier, and all these tanks I'm playing are tier 9. Okay, only one was I top tier, which you're going to see, and I don't think there are any 7s. It was just tier 9 and 8, which is technically, the game sees that as a tier 10 game, just so you know. So every game I was in was tier 10. Some of them were tier 11. What's a tier 11 game? Tier 11 game is a tier 10 game where there are no tier 8s. The game classifies those as tier 11, and a game that is strictly tier 10, it classifies as tier 12. We have not had tier 12 games in a very long time, because there's not enough players anymore for that. So you don't get those anymore. But yeah, that's what we're counting down. And if you are a member, you will get to see all these replays to their fullest, unedited, straight up. Bada bing, bada boom. If you want to see some crazy ace tankers, some great games, you know, become a member. Otherwise, you're just going to get what we typically give you, which is the counting down, showing off the highlights, and bada bing, bada boom, fun editing. And hopefully you guys enjoy number 1 or number 7, however you're counting. It doesn't matter, because this isn't really a which one is best. This is just 7 tanks to kind of keep everybody updated. I love to teach, and I love to make sure everybody knows about all the tanks in this game, which is why I love these top 7 videos. Our second on the list is the Type 4 Heavy. You go from the Type 4 to the Type 5. And yeah, it's the same thing. It's like the back is slightly different. Okay? Otherwise, it's the same thing. Your armor gets beefed up, but the model's the same. The gun gets beefed up, but actually the gun is technically the same, and by beefed up, I mean the HE has 100 more alpha. Otherwise, it's identical. Same speed, same mobility, same gun depression, same choice of guns. In fact, actually, the Type 4 has more choices of guns, because you can play it stock, which is pretty cool. But yeah, that's the Type 4 in a nutshell. The issues with the Type 4 compared to the Type 5, though, is the health pool. I mean, you have 2,050 health at tier 9, which is absolutely absurd, but you go up 750 at tier 10, and your armor actually starts to work. And again, with tier 9 matchmaking, you're fighting tier 10s basically all the time. It can get pretty obnoxious. You don't have to worry about that in the Type 5, because, yeah, you're fighting 10s all the time, but at least you're a tier 10. I mean, there goes the tier 10 version of me right there in front of me. Same tank. As you can see, just the back is slightly different. Otherwise, it's the same exact vehicle, just better. And so it's pretty cool. You get to up tier when you finally upgrade, and you know exactly what you're getting. And these don't play anything like the OHO or the ONI. Those tanks are very different as well. They have armor, just slabs of armor, but they don't have the big beefy guns that these ones have. And they have awkward areas where you don't have the gun depression, like unlike these ones, which just have 10 degrees all the way around, except I think the back. I think actually the Type 5 has 10 degrees over the back, while the Type 4 does not, because of the shape of the hull. The back is slightly different, and that allows the Type 5 to get its gun down. So again, just here you go. Here's the same tank. It's just we've given it you know, just some stuff that's better. And again, that's really, really cool. And hopefully you guys learned something from this. And hello, little HE shell. You got HE, got heat. We're up to 3,000 damage. This tank is pretty good. I 3-marked it grinding through it. I didn't even get the top gun on it by the time I 3-marked it. So if you want an easy 3-mark, the Type 4 Heavy is not played well. Okay, number 3, we've got the AMX Foch, or we'll just call it the Foch, because that's what it's called in the game. It's just the Foch. And if you go from the Foch to the Foch 155, or on PC, the Foch B, there it is, the Foch B, you'll know the mobility's the same, the hull armor is the same, the layout's the same, and from the B, or the Foch to the Foch B, which you can use in this game, it's the same gun. But, okay, so what do you get? What makes the tier 10 better? Well, let me tell you about the gun on the tier 10. You go from just 4 rounds up to 6 rounds. And then, of course, your hit point pool goes up from 1550 to 1850. So you get 300 more health. On top of that, you can also, if you choose to here on console, you can throw on the big 155 gun. Okay, it's the Foch 155. And that's really cool as well. Otherwise, though, it's the same tank, same exact play style. You know what you're getting. You know what you can do. It's really, again, it's cool. I like that concept. It's like, oh, hey, you just upgraded. Here's the same exact tank, but we just tweaked everything so it's just a little bit better, and it's really cool. But oftentimes that doesn't make the tank better, and it's like, huh, is it worth it? And that's what we're gonna be getting into in the next tank. Is, you know, this change. It's like, is it worth it? Of course, everything I'm talking about is completely my opinion, so make sure you remember that. Number 4 is the Conqueror, and this one is probably the funniest one to me. So the Conqueror goes from the Conqueror at tier 9 to the Super Conqueror, and that's it. Same gun, same armor. It just, let's give it spaced armor. Boom. That's the change. That's the difference. The gun also reloads a little bit quicker as well, because that's what they do, is they like to give you, when you go from one tier to the next and it's got the same gun, they like to give you some better gun handling and some better DPM. But otherwise, it's the same tank. You can fight tier 10s pretty effectively, especially when you get the hull down, because it's the same turret. The cupola is slightly different, and that's about it. Now, this wasn't always the case, because the Conqueror used to go strictly to the FV215 B, that heavy tank down there that we're shooting at, which is completely different. It's basically you took the Conqueror hull and the Conqueror turret and moved it to the back of the tank. That was the FV215 B, beefed up its DPM, beefed up its gun handling, bada bing, bada boom, you've got yourself a tier 10. Also, the FV215 B had the better hull armor. Believe it or not, the Conqueror used to have the same 130mm upper plate armor as the Carnarvon. And so that was another thing. That was another tank that kind of, when you upgraded from the Carnarvon to the Conqueror, it was the same tank, except you got a better gun. It's like, oh, here, from tier 8 to tier 9, same tank, but a better gun. That's not the case anymore. The Carnarvon's completely different. They gave it new turrets, and they gave it new guns, different hull armor now, same hull layout, but the hull armor is different. You go from 130 to 150, then you go to 150 again, but 20mm of spaced armor, which is really, really nice. So pretty cool stuff. And that's the case. From the Conqueror to the Super Conqueror, you're playing the same tank. Don't worry. If you played the tier 9, you know exactly what you're getting at the tier 10. But, and I mentioned this, like, is it worth it? Is the tier 10 worth it? Tier for tier? I don't think so. I think the Conqueror tier for tier is absolutely nuts. However, you are not going to be fighting, you know, your same tier much. You're mostly going to be fighting tier 10. That's basically how it goes. You're just fighting tier 10s. And so because of that, the Super Conqueror is going to be better, and the Super Conqueror, but frankly, at tier 10, is an absolute beast. You can't kill it, basically, when it's hull down using gun depression. Obviously, there's some weak spots on the turret, but those weak spots are hard to hit. I don't care what the Super Unicums say. I've seen some of their streams where they brag about how easy they are to kill when they're fighting them, and then they just bounce off and complain about RNG. It's like, yeah, that's why they're hard to kill while held down, okay? You can brag about how easy they are to kill, but unless you can prove it, have fun. Super Conqueror hull down is going to absolutely eviscerate you. Same with the Conqueror. If it's hull down, using its gun depression is going to eviscerate you. Most tanks in the game. And if you really want to trade, then go for it. Because frankly, it doesn't need RNG to pen you. You need RNG to pen it, so it's going to win. That, my friends, is the Conqueror. Time for the tank that replaced the Leopards on this list. I was going to do the Leopard prototype to the Leopard 1, but then I realized the hull armor and the turret armor were completely different. Meanwhile, the AMX 30 to the AMX 30B, it's got the same hull, and basically the same turret, except the 30B being more modern. Oh, what a shot, CloneGuy. Being more modern has a bigger cupola on it, and that's not necessarily an issue in real life. You know, it's better for survival and better for spotting, and probably has more technology in it. But in World of Tanks, it's obnoxious, right? You don't want the bigger cupola. But otherwise, it's the same thing. In fact, it's got the same gun. It's got the same mobility. It's got the same camouflage. It's got the same, I think it even has the same view range, 410. It's the same tank. The only change is that your gun gets better at tier 10, which is crazy because this gun is really good at tier 9. However, then you have things like the Leopard prototype and the Leopard 1, which are just better vehicles as well. And it's like, is it even worth it anymore? I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I think, frankly, you should just play the Leopards. They're just better. But that's not the point. We're not talking about what tanks are better. I just like to tell you these things in my videos because the more I can reiterate things in my videos, the more things are going to stick for you guys. And again, I want players to have just as much knowledge in the game as I do, which is why I love these top 7s and I love to teach. But again, you've got 8 degrees of gun depression on this thing, 410 view range. You go 65 kilometers an hour with my setup. I have 275 meters steel concealment. The gun stabilization is absolutely insane on this tank, which was kind of what made this tank amazing when it first came out, because you had the Patton, which had really good gun stabilization, but it only went 45. Then you got these ones, which go 65. This tank has been nerfed, and same with the tier 10 for reasons unknown to me. They nerf and buff tanks based on how well they're played by the minorities rather than how much they're played, which is a little bit strange to me, and here's why. Bad players don't play bad tanks. Good players play bad tanks. Therefore, bad tanks look better than good tanks. Good players are going to play good tanks, tanks that they do decent in, and so those tanks are going to look not that great simply because only both bad and good players are playing them. So they're going to look Joe average, those tanks, even though they're the better tanks. And so realistically, to balance a game, you've got to nerf tanks that are popular and buff tanks that aren't popular. That's the key to success, really. But I digress. That's just my gripe. I don't know why the 30B got nerfed. It never should have, especially considering the M60 was in the game and the Leopard 1 was in the game, and then they buffed the Leopard 1. And, blah, blah. And if you're wondering what they nerfed, it was just shell velocity and the penetration. They recently buffed, and by recently I mean like 2 years ago, they rebuffed the shell velocity and they buffed the penetration again, but still not to the 260 it used to have. It is still only 255, and the premium went from 330 down to 310. So you're struggling on the penetration department. Otherwise, though, this tank is pretty solid. I like it. And again, going from tier 9 to tier 10, you're just playing the same exact tank, just one of them has a taller cupola. And that's the difference. So far, most of these tanks have been upgrades. But then we get to this one. And I would argue that it is not an upgrade. If anything, I think you're downgrading. You're basically... So you go from... Let me tell you what this tank is called, first of all. It is the WZ-111 GFT, Tier 9 Chinese Tank Destroyer, which was, by the way, fantastic. And this is the only game I was able to play where I was top tier during this entire video. By the way, I think this tank is absolutely fantastic. It's a crazy good tank destroyer. I think it's better than the 704. Maybe that's an unpopular opinion, but that's because of the gun. Okay, you get the 152 that the tier 10 gets. That's something the 704 doesn't have to the 268. The 268, you get this upgraded gun, you get upgraded armor, you get upgraded concealment, upgraded mobility. It's just a better tank. And then you have the 704, which again has the BL-10. It's a great gun, but it's not the tier 10 gun. Then you move over to the Chinese tanks. This is just better. It's got the same gun that tier 10 has, and basically the same armor. All right, you have the same lower plate and upper plate weak spot, and your superstructure is just a touch weaker. But again, you could fight tier 7s in this. And frankly, the superstructure, I don't notice really blocking damage much on either of them, and so I don't mind the armor on the tier 9 superstructure in tier 10. It basically does the same thing that the tier 10 does. is tier for, like, in the same tier even. Like, I don't mind. I'm like, why spend the credits? Why spend the credits to upgrade this tank when I could just keep it at tier 9 and occasionally even fight tier 7s? Which is absolutely nuts to me. This tank fighting tier 7s, they can't touch you. You are unkillable, basically, for them. You're like, hey, tier 7s, you know how you aren't allowed to fight tier 10s? Yes, you are. You're allowed to fight me, and I'm a tier 10. But it's not toxic like, let's say, the Night Stalker, okay? Another tank that is basically the tier 10, which we've already listed, is the Conqueror. That's another one where it's like, oh boy, if you're tier 7, you have to fight a Conqueror, good luck. But at least the Conqueror has very weak side armor and an incredibly weak lower plate. And you're also not blopping people for, I mean, you saw me hit that Barosk for 1,000 with my HE, 90mm of pen, 1100 alpha. We rolled low on him. And then otherwise, we have 300 pen on our AP rounds with 750 alpha. And then we have 400, well, I say 400, it's really 395 millimeters of heat penetration with 750 alpha. 400! It's like, oh, hello, Mr. Tiger. Here's 400 millimeters of penetration, despite the fact that you only have 100 millimeters of armor. That's going through, straight through that Tiger and into the next Tiger. Like, boom, double kill. Basically, that's what this gun could do if this wasn't an arcade game. But of course, then you're talking about heat rounds, and heat rounds have that molten jet, and so no, you wouldn't be able to kill the Tiger behind it. But from the side, you probably could kill 2 Tigers easily. And again, that's what you'd be fighting against. And these are Tigers, and Comets, and T-43s. You can fight T-44s, which are tier 8, which is also pretty crazy. So yeah, that's this tank. I think it's nuts. I mean, we're up to 5,000 damage. We didn't even do anything. Like, okay, 5 grand, boom, done. Wonderful game. Wonderful tank. Should you upgrade? Not really. You go to the WZ-113 GFT. 113. You change the number just a little bit. And it's the same tank. You look at it, first glance, again, you're going to think it's the same tank. Same gun. Same everything. But you go to tier 10, your gun reloads a little bit faster, it's got a little bit better gun handling, and the superstructure armor is just a little bit better. That's it. Otherwise, same tank. Now this time, I actually did save the best for last, the most tier 10-like tank in the game, because this was the original, this was the OG. The E50 to the E50M. This is a hilarious upgrade, because, especially back in the day, it's got the same hull armor, the same turret armor, the same gun depression, the same DPM, the same gun handling, the same mobility. Everything about the tank was exactly the same as the tier 10. And unlike the other tanks, like the WZ-111-5A, where it gets a DPM buff and a gun handling buff and so on and so forth, this tank got a, well, hey, you know your premium rounds? Yeah? Those are now your standard rounds. Oh. Anything else? Nope. That's it. Have fun. And then, of course, your health is buffed to the tier 10 level, okay? You go from 1750, which is crazy good for tier 9 medium tank, up to 2050, so you get 300 more health. But again, otherwise it's the same tank, same DPM, everything. It's been changed. There's been a lot of rebalances on the E50 and E50M, okay? Gun depressions have changed. I think they're both the same there. Armors have changed, which I think I'm pretty sure they're the same as well. Mobility has changed, which I think is the same. But the DPM and gun handling has changed. And now the E50M finally has better DPM and better gun handling. But otherwise, it's the same exact tank. I mean, if you look at them, again, you're not going to notice. The fins are slightly different. The fins are slightly different. And the E50M just looks a little more squished. Just a little more squished to the E50. And that, otherwise, it's the same tank. E50, E50M, E50, E50M, E50 Micro. I don't know. But they both love to ram. And they both have laser guns and super fast APCR. Despite the E50's gun handling nerfs, they've rebuffed it. Not quite to the same level it used to be. But there we go. The E50 to the E50M. Again, basically the same tank. And I'm all here for it. Anyway, that's my list. 7 tanks that do not change. They just get upgraded, which I guess is technically changing, but I mean, you go from the same tank to the same tank, right? One tank to the same tank. I mean, that's it. That's what happens. But I hope you guys enjoyed. If there are other tanks that I missed, which I probably did, and maybe you would have included the Leopard, maybe you would have included the T-54, maybe there's a different tank you would have included. I almost included the AMX 1390 to the AMX 13105, except that it had a different gun. Again, all these tanks have the same exact gun, just, you know, buffed, basically. So yeah, I almost included that. I also almost included the Batchat 155-55 to the Batchat 155-58. Again, that's basically the same tank, except you get an autoloader on one of them, but it's the same gun. But I didn't. We went a different route. But if you did enjoy, slap that like button, comment, subscribe, become a member today. I will be dropping, hopefully today, it was supposed to be dropped on Christmas, but I fell behind. I'll be dropping Chapter 3 of Dalstar Rise of Hope, my story. Draft 1, keep that in mind, Draft 1, on the channel. And then those of you who aren't members, you will get Chapter 2 today. And so that's exciting. And then, of course, if you want to watch the full replays that are listed here, there are 7 of them. That will be released today for members only, and it's just $1.99 a month. That's it. That's all you have to. That's all you have to fork over. Except, you know, maybe skip Starbucks for a day, or no, just don't throw your cream in your Starbucks coffee. And bada bing, bada boom, you can afford a month. All right, that's it. That's all you have to do. Yeah. Anyway, yep. Enough selling out myself to myself. I guess that's what it is. Right? I will see you all later. Make sure you guys have a fantastic New Year's, and if you don't, then it's probably because you're playing World Tanks. Peace out.